Hello and welcome to the Boat Shed. My name is John and this boat behind me is Antidote. Now I'm on a mission to restore this old boat and I have a lot of work to do first. Now today we're talking about oil analysis. Antidote has a 35-year-old marine diesel on board, and with all these other projects that I have to do to get this boat ready to go, how do I know how much time, or if any, is required to get this engine in top condition? That's where oil analysis might be able to help me understand the condition of this engine without even taking a single nut or bolt off. I guess except for the drain plug. So this video is a director's cut of a long conversation I had with Joe Adams from BLACKSTONE Laboratories all about oil analysis and why you might want to do that with your engine. Now if you're coming to this video from my usual channel, then you might want to hit that channel marker down there to skip ahead to where you left off. Now if you're new to the channel, I'll put a link right up here for where this bonus content fits in. We have an expert waiting in the wings to help demystify the art of oil analysis, so let's get right into it. Stick around. We are here with Joe Adams, who is a senior analyst with BLACKSTONE Laboratories in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Joe is here to fill us in on why oil testing. You know, Joe, like my grandpa showed me, you rub it between your fingers, it's black, it doesn't smell too bad, it's not cloudy white. So what else do I need to know about my oil?
Well, oil has always been more than meets the eye. And when you think about it, when an engine needs oil to do its job, it only makes sense that the oil can tell you about the engine it's taking care of. You know, when it's in the process of cleaning and lubricating, it's picking up wear metals and contaminants, and it's putting the physical properties to the test as well. So, sending in a sample of the unused oil or used oil in this case allows you to look inside the engine without tearing it apart and understanding what's going on.
Okay, so what are the different things that I might find in this oil? Now, most of the people watching this probably diesel engines, hopefully closed loop cooling systems, not a lot of gas engines out there. If you do have an old Atomic 4, I really feel your pain. But let's focus in on there today. What are the main things that you're going to be finding in oil samples that we need to be looking out for, things that we want to find, things we definitely don't want to see? What are they telling us?
Well, one quote that I'd take away from one of your videos, just to get into it, that I
Okay.
was enjoying just before this was that Murphy always shows up. And
Yes.
Murphy can show up in the engine oil in the form of poor wear, contamination from fuel, water, also an oil that's not holding up well, be that the result of excess heat. We can see that in, say, a high viscosity. We can see an oil filter that's not working effectively based on how much solid material is present. So really, it gives you a rundown of how the engine is getting along, and if it's getting along poorly, why that might be. Is it because of water ingress? Is it because of fuel? And even when you talk about water, is it seawater or is it coolant? We can tell the difference based on the ratio of elements like sodium and potassium. So not only does it tell you how the engine is doing, but we want to go beyond that and give you some context into those numbers, what could be affecting it. And then, of course, if we have any information to pass along, helpful next steps the owner can take as far as addressing whatever issue may be ailing the motor.
Okay. Give us an idea. How many samples are you looking at any given day, week, month, year?
It's funny to even think about right now because it's never been more. So I think if I were to just conservatively estimate it right now, I mean we're north of 500, we're probably north of 600, and that's just per day. It's something that has only gone up every year I've been around, but this year exponentially. And I don't know quite why that is, but something is driving increased enthusiasm. And whether that is, say, owners who are wanting to be extra careful with their maintenance with how expensive used cars are, aircraft, marine owners who are just finding out about us, but it's some combination that is only causing that sample volume to go up.
We're dealing with a 90 horsepower motor here. I could probably get away with 65, 75. The sticker price on that will blow your hair back. So
Oh, I believe it.
testing oil to me seems like really good economy, especially when I have this giant refit and I don't have infinite time to sort everything out or just say rebuild the whole engine just for the sake of it. Part of the reason for that question was to understand what kind of background data do you have? Like I come to you with this first sample probably ever from this engine, maybe a previous owner sampled. Assuming it's the first time you're looking at this engine, what kind of historical data do you have from your sample that can maybe help understand this is similar to other engines in this category or this exact same make model? How can that help drive the discussion?
Yeah, so what we like to do is dial in the exact engine model that you're sampling. So if you send in a sample and you identify the model, we're going to go to our averages for that specific engine type, not necessarily the oil type. Because while the additive package of various oils can vary, we find that really the key differences don't lie in what oil you're running, but the engine it's being run in. So we're going to have averages dedicated to that model, like in your case, the SP90. And then what we're going to do is look at how your sample compares mainly in the wear metals. We want to see if the metals in your oil, if they have a familiar shape, what's dominant is in this case, the SP90, copper tends to be the dominant metal, followed by iron, aluminum, so on and so forth. So we want to see in your sample, compared to the historical data we have, is your engine wearing in a typical manner? And if it's not, why that might be. So, for example, say you have a whopping amount of chrome in the oil, which is a ring metal, a chrome level in excess of aluminum, let's say, from the pistons or iron from the cylinder walls. That can be a clue that you have a cylinder area issue that needs to be addressed. Not to mention, if that chrome is coinciding with a lot of fuel dilution, that can also be a symptom of that problem. So, we want to see how your sample stacks up with what we expect from that engine. And also, if we see levels that are high, we want to view them in context. We want to understand, is this a wear in situation? Have you just made repairs that could impact the levels? And as such, we can tell you, hey, this does look like typical wear in, or it does not, or it looks like, there's some other issue in these results. We will break down how it looks compared to what we expect, and then also going beyond that, if the levels are high or low, why that might be.
With my particular engine, we were sitting for quite a while. Do you recommend running the motor for 15 minutes? How important is that aspect?
So overall, you're not risking too much. The main thing is fuel. When an engine is, say, only idled briefly or started shortly before sampling, or if the boat's been sitting a while, then you can often run into fuel dilution. That doesn't come from a problem. It's mainly situational from the low RPM operation that these engines are accustomed to. So ideally, you get out there, whether it's a marine application or any other, allowing the fuel from startup to burn off, and then we can see, all right, is there fuel that's not related to startup, but more indicative of a problem like a stuck or leaking injector, some other issue with the fuel system? So fuel is the main thing that you can avoid by doing that 15-minute run. However, the metals, though, are going to be pretty much as is. Oil holds everything in a pretty even suspension, so you don't need to really worry about shaking it up or running it to pick up a certain amount of metal in order to determine how that engine is doing. If you want a wear profile, you can get that with or without warming it up usually, but to avoid fuel, warming it up is the way to go.
Being as it is, I am a glutton for punishment and I enjoy a good challenge. We'll get this thing fired up and run it for about 15 minutes, try and get it off the bottom. Difficult to apply a lot of load here on the driveway, but we'll do our best and just keep that in mind when you look at our sample.
Absolutely. That's something we'd love to know about whenever you're filling out the slip. Sampling conditions are key to have on our side as well. Background info that can help explain a less than ideal result is always helpful.
So, Joe, for people that are working with marine diesel engines, what's the main thing that we need to be worried about or thinking of? Is there something that's different than a typical land-based engine that we should be aware of?
Not so much in the sense that engines tend to run well when they are contaminant free and when they have an ideal oil change interval and a routine maintenance plan that's keeping an eye on things. So that it's comforting in the sense that when you have an engine that is dialed in on an oil change interval that's not asking too much of the engine or oil that's being run, and you're keeping an eye on contaminants, making sure they're away from the engine oil, they're all a lot alike in that sense, in that you can anticipate good looking oil reports with that maintenance plan in tow. So keeping an eye out for contaminants and addressing them as they pop up, and again, just finding that oil change interval that is agreeable. And that can take a few samples. So it's important to exercise patience in some cases. Some people will want to run well past the OEM recommended interval, which their engines can prove capable of that. Some people are very conservative, but whatever the case may be, sampling will tell you how often you should be changing the oil, whether or not you can stretch that interval. And once you've dialed that in and you're keeping an eye out for water and fuel and dirt, debris, and the rest of it, well, then you can just keep an eye on things every once in a while. Maybe you skip an oil change here or there, but of course, developing those trends and understanding how the engine's responding to the use it sees, it applies to marine diesels, it applies to any gasoline engine that's going down the road or an engine up in the air for that matter. It's just part of maintaining that routine maintenance that all engines need.
The sense I'm getting from you is that you're interested in helping people arrive at these sorts of conclusions, understanding what their problems are, and maybe finding that ideal interval instead of just getting a list of numbers and a link to where you can research this on Google. It sounds like you guys are really trying to provide a report and some guidance.
Mhm. We want to meet them where they are. So whether they are an industry pro or an enthusiast or someone who is brand new to maintaining whatever it is they own, that report is for them. So the way we tailor it is in the comment. The comment section accompanies the results. And what we do is pay attention to who we're writing it for. Whatever the case may be, I want to meet them where they are, where their experience level is, and sometimes that takes sleuthing, just understanding what's being sampled, who's sampling it. If it's a marine surveyor, I'm probably going to have a different tone than someone who is the owner. We want to understand who we're writing it for, and that will tailor the approach in the comment, whether that means making as many suggestions as possible or knowing, hey, this guy's mechanic. He knows what to look for. We're going to tell him what may be there and he'll take it from there, or telling someone, hey, this looks like it might be a head gasket problem. Some of these models are known for that. You probably want to check into it. So it really requires a comprehensive approach of understanding the client, the engine, and what the oil's telling us.
It would be amazing if we could unpack that together, maybe in a future episode. So,
Oh, absolutely. Breaking down the results would be a lot of fun.
okay, cool. I think that'll be something fun to look forward to. Hopefully, you'll have more good news for me than bad. Cool. That answers a lot of my questions about the engine and why we might want to do some oil analysis. I think this is going to be a great way to invest in this engine that I have. We have about 5,000 hours on it currently. Anecdotally, I hear 10,000 is sort of the number where you might start thinking of a rebuild on these motors. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into that with the care, like you're saying, and maintenance intervals and stuff. So this will be a great way for me to get a baseline on that, and
Right.
we can see going forward. So just maybe some interesting questions for you though. What's the craziest thing you've ever found in an oil sample?
Let's see. Very large insects. Those have shown up and the owner couldn't explain how they got in there. Mainly I think of cases where the metals were so exorbitant to the point where there was packed with glitter even, and the engine still ran, and like inexplicable things where I'm looking at a sample with levels sky high in parts per million, which is the size we measure, and then I'm looking at a cap where I draw a magnet over it. It looks like something out of a horror movie where it's just dragging all this ferrous debris. And I call them, I'm like, how's the engine doing? And they're like, well, it runs a little rough, you know. But
Yeah,
as far as oddities, it's not so much, oh, way out left field, how'd that get in there? It's more so um, an interest in just learning the tolerance that some motors can have when, the oil can have all manner of milkshake appearance from so much coolant contamination and visible metal, and understanding that, some engines can still make it happen, even if they have been so like, neglected and to the point where they're making chunks of metal, and they can still make a comeback. And I think that it's more so learning the tolerance that's so incredible that some motors can have. But yeah, I'm sure I'm leaving out some really odd stuff over the years, but believe it or not, it's more so just marveling at what can be there
right.
just from the oil doing its job.
So you've never found a mouse in the bottle?
Not yet, but
Yeah.
again, the insect bottle was pretty
No,
interesting.
no strange brew happening over at Blackstone Labs yet. Okay. That's a Canadian movie reference that might
Oh
get
yeah.
a lot of people. Okay, what's your take on all these oil additives you've got? I mean, I don't want to name any brands in particular, but it seems like when I go to the shelf at any auto parts store, or even at the some of the really good marine chandleries that I trust and love, there's all kinds of things I can dump in my oil that are promising to do X, Y, and Z.
hmm
Got any take on that?
Well, first thing is I think it would surprise a lot of people to know how much additive is in the oil already. I think a lot of people seek out additives because they assume that maybe what's in the bottle is something just insufficient, nothing in there. It's just oil. I think it would surprise people to know that any oil you buy off the shelf, it's going to be, anything API certified is going to be packed with anti-wear, detergent dispersant additives. And often the additives that people buy to add into the oil, they often contain elements that are already in the oil to begin with. I think that would surprise a lot of people. Now, adding more phosphorus or zinc, more commonly known as the additive ZDDP, adding more of that in there would certainly not hurt anything. It doesn't. People love to do it, especially for older flat tappet motors, and that's fine. But the oil that's on the shelf has all the additive you need to do the job of cleaning and lubricating. Now, there are additives that certainly accomplish particular goals. One I like to reference here is Lucas, in the sense that Lucas Oil Stabilizer, for example, from personal experience, it can help slow down leaks, and that is a very real, tangible thing. One thing I don't love is sometimes people use it to quiet a noise, which I think is the ultimate version of a band-aid, or duct tape on a dam that's already about to break, because you don't want to mask a symptom. You want to understand why it's doing that and then address it. So things like a flush, sure, it can clean out sludge. Now, does that mean that an engine that had a problem will no longer have a problem? Absolutely not. Additives won't cure a problem, but they can accomplish things. So
Right.
I think at the end of the day, the oil you're buying on the shelf that's an API certified product has what you need to get the ball rolling. And then in some cases here or there, an additive can help you out. But it surprised people, I think, just how capable the oil is already.
So if you're using an additive to reduce noise or cover a noise, then the next one that you hear will be the last one the engine makes, I imagine.
The ugliest one, too.
Ugliest
Yeah,
one. Exactly.
exactly.
I think you answered all my questions, even the weird ones.
I might have a question for you, though.
Okay, yeah, go ahead and fire away.
So something I admire about your channel is like how personal of a story it is. And when did you kind of decide that this was something you want to give to the people, strangers that you don't know who may or may not be interested? When did you know that you want to kind of open that door?
Right. That's a great question because I'm still not sure if this is what I want to do. No, well, yeah, I mean, I don't know how much of the story you've heard, but as an engineer for 13 years, I've always loved, if you're an engineer, you're always an engineer. It doesn't matter if you're working as an engineer or doing something else, the way that you problem solve and overcomplicate things, find difficult solutions to easy problems. Those are things that are going to stay with you forever. But I was definitely looking for something to kind of reawaken this spark. And so I just love sailing and I love fixing things and rebuilding things and restoring things. And so this to me was an obvious project, and thankfully my wife really pushed me towards it because my gravity towards safety and like the concept of like, well, I should work for 40 years with this company because I'll have a good pension and I'll have a very stable and secure life, and then I can at that point I can get a boat. And the for me at some point, really during the COVID pandemic, actually, I kind of hate saying those two words together because it's like now we just got flagged. We can't put this on YouTube anymore. But it was really during that season of life where I started to really think about what I wanted to be doing, and also reading a book that really pushed me to get back into the boat. And so went for it. And it's the ultimate project for an engineer. An old sailboat is just the ultimate systems and things like that. And so I wanted to jump into it. And the YouTube channel, the idea to share it, I think it's a cool story. I think people, it's not just fixing up a boat or a how-to channel. It is a lot of that, but also, I mean, the deeper underlying story, which maybe I should talk more about, is that this is a restoration story for me as well.
Mm,
And because, I was in a job that I didn't love, and waking up, getting to work by 7 a.m. to be on meetings with people overseas and cranking on things and pouring energy into things that I really wasn't passionate about. So this is something that I'm passionate about, and this directly impacts my life. And I just I wanted to share it. The time that it takes to tack on the YouTube section is pretty dramatic.
Right.
Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. And financially, it isn't. But what I love is that I've done all these interesting things in my life. I love to build things. I have so many cool things that I've built, and people look at them and they go, "Wow, that's awesome." And I have like two cell phone pictures, like one third of the way through and then complete. And and so I just said, I want to document this project. And so if nothing else, I have the whole story for myself. And it's been surprising to me how many people are interested in it so
Mm.
far. It's really cool to meet people like that are like-minded and have all sorts of people that want to help and jump in, like yourself.
Hmm.
Want to help get this oil figured out, and you offered to come on the show here today. So
Yeah, I mean, you've spent more time in, in the comment sections probably than I have, but one thing that I've caught though, in the few videos I watched is how positive and locked into this journey a lot of the viewers are. Which anytime you can find like a pocket of good on the internet, it's like kind of restores your faith in humanity a little bit. Because here is like someone who is, being very personable and allowing people into this, this journey you're on, and people are excited for you and like wanting to follow along. And because I could so easily think, oh, someone's gonna want to tell them how to do all of it. Someone's gonna be like, you don't know what you're doing with that part, or you need to, but instead it's people who are just really enthused and like right there with you, which I think is really neat.
it's mainly positive
Hmm.
feedback that I get. Most people are interested in it, and there are occasional people that are, like, what are you doing? This boat's a waste of time. And that's okay that people feel that way. And truly, you don't get it unless you do. And for me, this is, a boat is never a really good investment monetarily, and from a financial standpoint, it's complete idiocracy. But that's not what the boat is about, right? So that's not what this
Hmm.
project is about for me. It's way more than the money of it, because like this boat is one that's capable of going all the way around the world. And in fact, I have some receipts from it when it was in Spain. So it's been across the pond
Wow.
at some point. And then here it is tied to a dock, 30 miles from my house here in
Yeah.
Victoria, BC. And so this glorious ocean crossing boat is tied to a dock, right? And I felt the same way. I'm this adventurous spirit chained to my desk.
Mm.
If anyone
Yeah.
from work is watching, I didn't feel like I was chained to my desk, but you get the picture, right? And so
Right.
it's this story of like, well, who's saving who, right? So I'm restoring this old boat to get it back to where it once was. And at the same time, although it's breaking my wallet in two, it's restoring me on a personal level. I get to pour my time into restoring this boat and share it with all these people. So
One thing I haven't caught yet, if you have said this in one of the videos so far, uh, do you have sort of a goal in your mind's eye when this restoration is complete, what you're going to ask of this boat? Do you want to do an around the world trip? Are you thinking of something, or is it mainly just the fact that you'll have it in your life and it will always, be something you can work on? I'm just kind of wondering, is there something at the end of the tunnel for you at the end of this restoration process?
yeah, absolutely. The goal is to travel and do some serious ocean traveling. Now, having said that, my experience has been mostly local here to the San Juan Islands, which is where we live, and it's a beautiful place to sail. It's quite protected.
Mm.
So we don't deal with a lot of big swell and stuff in here. In fact, because Vancouver Island comes down and shelters a lot of it. Uh, I have done some offshore sailing, especially with I did a passage with John Kretschmer, who's an author and a sail instructor. So we did an offshore passage together. But that's really my biggest experience out in blue water. But when my wife sent me off on that trip she didn't send me off, but you know what I mean. When she sort of like waved goodbye, she said, "I'm afraid I'm going to lose you here to this sort of thing," you know. And I was wondering, like, I'm either going to hate this or love it, and I had a great time. So I would love to be back out doing that sort of thing. So what I would see us doing is probably going around Vancouver Island as a shakedown with my wife and I. And then once we get around, we would have the opportunity to duck back in if there's something we completely missed, or if we've decided that this is absolutely not what we want to do.
Yeah.
But I think what will likely happen is that we'll continue to cruise down the coast, and then we have a decision to make to head west or go up through the canal and up into the Caribbean. But I would like to get to the Caribbean the long way. That would
Hmm.
be my goal.
Yeah, of course.
So,
Well, I'm going to be right there with you following along. So
oh,
keep
thanks, Joe.
on
Yeah, well, don't hold your breath. It's going to be a little while.
floating.
My challenge, and you'll get this if you're watching the videos, my challenge, and I've spoken a little bit about this too, is to fight the perfectionist tendency. Uh,
Right.
like I said earlier, and engineers, the goal is to always design the best solution to a problem, but sometimes we can overcomplicate things, and I like to do things to a high degree, so I don't really often aim for the that should hold kind of approach. I'd rather design and execute something really well, and that can often take a little bit longer. But when I'm done with this project, I'm going to know this boat inside out. I'll know every system on board and every strength and weakness, and hopefully have a high degree of confidence in it. So, um, yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a really, really great ocean boat when it's done. It's not going to be the fastest boat on the water. Someone that I trust and love compared it to a battleship, but it'll be a great, hopefully comfortable and safe home for us. And
Hmm.
I do hope to be sharing stories with people as we're traveling, and not just here on the driveway in the white tent.
It's an impressive tent, though. Don't undersell it. It's very impressive.
It's a pretty cool structure. Thankfully, I have really excellent neighbors, and everyone's been really supportive where I live here. And I've managed to, yeah.
Was that your own design, by the way, or did you find one you liked and you built it from there?
It's adapted off of a design from the LSU agricultural website. They have a Gothic arch tent, and
Ah, okay.
based on that. So I'm happy to share the plans with anyone. They're not mine. I do my lawyer disclaimer. I do not, certify this build for anyone else. But yeah, it's a big imposing structure here. It's fully covered and keeps us pretty dry. It's cold in there right now, but
Yeah.
it gets the job done. So
Excellent. Well, yeah, it's so much fun checking out what you've been building and the community you've been cultivating all the while. That's impressive, and I'm here for it. So,
cool. Thanks, Joe. And I think, like you asked if we could do a podcast for your show. I think that's a great idea.
mhm.
Maybe I'll let you kind of trigger when you think it's a right time to do that for the people in your audience, like
Yeah, I think as soon as we have some data to to marry with the background story,
cool.
that would be perfect. And it's so difficult when oil that can be any system that needs oil to do its job is in our wheelhouse, and as such, it's hard to feel like we're doing paying full attention to every community we can. Sometimes I'm like, gosh, I haven't talked about marine diesels in a minute, or oh man, I need some aircraft content. I haven't talked about anything industrial, anything off road, or whatever. So, making sure that as these opportunities come, just embracing it and jumping in and maintaining that connection is really key. So, I think after we get some data from that engine and then start talking about it, that'd be a logical jumping off point. So,
Great. I'm totally here for it. I think that's fun.
excellent.
It's been really fun chatting with you today. So I think that would be a cool thing to do.
Yeah, man.
Joe, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you giving us an idea of why we might want to look to a company like Blackstone for some oil analysis. I think this is going to be really interesting to see what we come up with. So I'm looking forward to that. So anyway, thanks for all your time today, chatting with us. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, John. I'm excited to get to know you, get to know Living for Sale, and stay on the journey all the while. So we'll be back.
Thanks for hanging around. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, feel free to hit that like button. I'm really excited to unpack the result of this oil analysis with Joe in a future video, and when it's ready, we'll put the link to that right up here. Down below, we'll put a link to Joe's podcast, Slick Talk, as well as a link to the BLACKSTONE Labs, where you can pick up your own free oil sample kit. If you're new and you want to watch the refit journey from the very beginning, then the playlist will start right here. And if you'd like to subscribe for more, the button is right there. See you next time.
This is fun for me because it's not my rodeo, you know.
Right.
Being a guest, it's a nice little change up from the norm, man.